You are lying in bed at 11 at night. Nothing happened today. Nothing triggered it. And suddenly your brain hands you a memory of something you said in a hallway 10 years ago. Your face gets hot in the dark. Your stomach actually drops, the same way it did the first time, and you have not thought about that hallway in months. You did not summon this. Nothing on television reminded you of it. No one said the person's name. Your brain simply reached back a full decade, past thousands of ordinary Tuesdays you can barely recall, past entire years that have gone soft and blurry at the edges, and it pulled out that one exact sentence with perfect, almost cruel clarity, the tone of your own voice included. Meanwhile, you cannot remember what you had for lunch 3 days ago. Somewhere your brain decided that a lunch from 3 days ago was disposable, and a hallway from 10 years ago was worth keeping in permanent, high-definition storage, and it never asked your permission to make that call. Why that memory? Why tonight, of all nights, with nothing happening around you to explain it? And why does a moment that nobody else on earth is thinking about right now still have the power to make your chest tighten like it is happening for the first time? By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what your brain is doing when it does this to you, and you will learn one piece of actual research that will change how that memory feels the very next time it shows up uninvited. There is a very specific reason your brain does this, to that one hallway, and not to the memory of what you had for dinner 3 nights ago. And understanding it changes how the memory feels. If you have ever laid awake replaying something you said years ago, comment the word cringe below, because you are nowhere near as alone in this as it feels at 11 at night. Here is what is actually happening in your skull in the exact moment that hallway sentence left your mouth 10 years ago. Deep in your brain sits a small, almond-shaped structure called the amygdala, and its entire job is deciding how emotionally important an experience is, in real time, as it happens to you. The instant you felt that flush of shame, your amygdala flagged the moment as significant, and your body responded by releasing cortisol and norepinephrine, the same stress chemicals your body reaches for during actual danger. Those chemicals do something specific to memory. Norepinephrine strengthens the connection between the amygdala and the hippocampus, the part of your brain that stores the fine-grained details of an experience, which is why you do not just remember that you were embarrassed. You remember the exact words, the exact face someone made, what you were wearing, where you were standing, maybe even the temperature of the room. That level of detail is not an accident, and it is not your imagination exaggerating things. Your brain was building a file marked urgent, the same way it would for any experience it judged worth remembering in precise detail for future reference. The way you would remember every second of nearly stepping into oncoming traffic. And it gets more personal than that, because embarrassment is never abstract. It happened to you, about you, in front of people watching you specifically, and your brain runs an entire dedicated system called the self-reference effect that encodes anything relating directly to you with extra strength, activating regions in the middle of your brain that stay comparatively quiet when you are just absorbing neutral facts about the world. Ordinary information gets filed away somewhere accessible. Information about you, judged by other people, gets underlined twice and moved to the top of the drawer. Here is the detail that makes this feel especially unfair. That same system does not treat every strong memory equally, and it has a clear favorite, and it is not the good stuff. Psychologists call this the negativity bias, the well-established tendency for the human brain to notice, store, and recall negative experiences more powerfully than positive ones of equal intensity. A wonderful compliment someone gave you last year has almost certainly faded into a vague, pleasant impression by now, one you could not quote back word for word if you tried. The one time someone laughed at you in front of a group has not faded at all, and you could probably still recite it. This is not a personal flaw, and it is not evidence that you are unusually sensitive. It is closer to a design choice, one that made sense for nearly the entirety of human history, when correctly remembering a single threat mattered far more for staying alive than correctly remembering a single pleasant afternoon. Cortisol, the same stress hormone released during your hallway moment, does something beyond sharpening detail. It helps generalize the memory outward, wiring the lesson from that one specific event into your broader understanding of social situations as a whole, rather than filing it away as one isolated incident that stays contained to itself. That is part of why a single bad moment can quietly color how safe an entire category of situations feels to you afterward, long after the original memory itself has faded into the background of your day. Now here is the part that actually explains why this system exists at all, and it has nothing to do with punishing you. For almost the entire span of human history, being cast out of your group was not an inconvenience. It was closer to a death sentence. No tribe meant no protection, no shared food, no one watching your back against a threat you could not survive alone. And researchers at UCLA found something remarkable when they scanned people's brains during a simple experience of being socially excluded from a game. The exact same brain region that lights up during physical pain, the anterior cingulate cortex, lit up during social rejection too. Your brain does not fully distinguish between a broken bone and a broken reputation. Both register in the same neural circuitry as damage. Both get flagged for urgent review, tagged for future avoidance, filed under things that must never happen again. Think about what exile genuinely meant for most of human history. It meant no one to help you carry water, no one to warn you about a predator you did not see coming, no one to share food with during a bad season, and very often it meant not surviving the winter at all. A brain that treated social rejection as a minor inconvenience would have quietly lost the genetic race to a brain that treated it as an emergency. So when you said the wrong thing in that hallway 10 years ago and felt every head turn slightly in your direction, some ancient, unreasonable part of your brain did not experience an awkward social slip. It experienced the modern, harmless equivalent of being pushed outside the fire circle at night, and it encoded that memory with the exact same intensity it would have used to keep you from walking toward a predator twice. That explains the intensity of the memory. It does not yet explain why it keeps returning years later, at 11 at night, for no reason you can point to. Part of the answer is what your brain is doing in exactly those quiet, low-stimulation moments. During the day, your attention is scattered across a dozen competing demands: an inbox, a conversation, traffic, a deadline, and your brain simply does not have the spare processing power to go digging through old files. But at night, lying in the dark with nothing left to occupy it, your brain runs a kind of maintenance process, sorting through stored experiences and reinforcing the ones it has already marked as important. An emotionally charged memory that was tagged urgent a decade ago gets pulled up during this process far more often than a neutral one ever will, simply because urgent files get checked more frequently than routine ones. And here is the detail that changes everything about how you should respond to it. The memory is not simply replayed like a video file sitting untouched in storage. It is reopened, and while it is open, it is briefly vulnerable to being re-strengthened all over again, a process researchers call reconsolidation. Every cringe, every wince, every time you mentally rehearse what you should have said instead, you are not draining the memory of its power the way you might hope. You are quietly reinforcing the exact neural pathway that keeps producing it in the first place. The habit that feels like finally processing the memory is often the very same habit that is preserving it for another 10 years. This is also part of why trying to simply forget about it rarely works the way people hope. Telling yourself to stop thinking about something requires thinking about it first, just to check whether you have stopped, and that quick check is itself another small dose of reconsolidation. You are not broken for replaying it. You are running exactly the software your brain was built to run, And that software was never designed with your comfort in mind. It was designed to keep the lesson available, permanently, just in case. There is one more layer to this, and it explains why the memories from your teenage years and early 20s hit so much harder than almost anything from last month. Psychologists call this the reminiscence bump, a well-documented and consistently replicated pattern where adults recall memories from roughly ages 10 through 25 more vividly and in far greater volume than memories from almost any other stretch of their life. During those exact years, your amygdala is running at close to full adult intensity, tagging every social interaction with real emotional weight, while your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for context, perspective, and emotional regulation, is still years away from finishing construction and will not fully mature until your mid-20s. That mismatch means an awkward moment at 15 got encoded twice as hard, once by raw, unfiltered emotional intensity, and a second time by the simple biological fact that your brain forms unusually durable, high-resolution memories during that exact developmental window, almost regardless of the content. You were not more embarrassing at 15 than you are today. You were just recording everything onto a far more sensitive tape, with almost nothing in place yet to talk you down in the moment it happened. This is also why so many adults, decades into careers and marriages and entire second acts of their lives, can still be quietly ambushed by a locker room comment or a lunchroom seat nobody offered them. The event itself was small. The recording equipment running that day was not. And now for the part I actually promised you at the start of this video. The fact that changes how all of this feels. In the year 2000, a psychologist named Thomas Gilovich ran an experiment at Cornell University that has since become one of the most repeated findings in all of social psychology. He had a student put on a plain t-shirt printed with an outdated, deliberately uncool image, walk into a room full of strangers, sit down for a few minutes, and then leave. Afterward, he asked that student one question. Out of everyone in that room, how many people do you think noticed the shirt? The student's answer, like almost every student who repeated the experiment after him across dozens of trials, hovered around 50%. Half the room, they were certain of it, because the shirt had felt so loud, so impossible to miss, that surely everyone had clocked it the second they walked in. Then Gilovich walked back into that same room and asked the people who had actually been sitting there the entire time. The real number came back at 23%, less than half of what the wearer had confidently assumed, and a large share of that 23% had already forgotten about it entirely by the time they were asked a few minutes later. Gilovich named this the spotlight effect, and it is not a one-time lucky result. It has been replicated again and again, across different settings, different embarrassments, different decades, and different countries entirely. You are, quite literally, the only person still running the footage. Gilovich found something else worth mentioning here too. A close cousin of the spotlight effect he named the illusion of transparency, the tendency to believe your inner nervousness, your racing heart, your obvious-sounding stammer was far more visible on the outside than it actually was. In his studies, people convinced their anxiety or their discomfort must have been written all over their face, consistently overestimated how much of it anyone else actually picked up on. The shame you remember feeling in that hallway was real. The audience you imagined watching it happen in real time, reading every flicker of it on your face, was mostly a story your own nervous system told you while it was happening, and that story is what got filed away alongside the memory itself. Think about that hallway moment from 10 years ago through that lens for a second, honestly. You have replayed it, by a conservative estimate, dozens of times by now. Maybe hundreds if you count every version at 11 at night. Everyone else standing in that hallway that day was not building a quiet file on you the way you assumed they were. They were half paying attention at best, worried about their own hallway moment, their own thing they wish they had not said, their own version of the exact same tape that is still running for them right now, and nobody else, including you. Your brain, running an ancient survival program built for a world where exile could genuinely end you, treated one passing awkward sentence like a 5-alarm threat to your entire social existence, and then kept that alarm on file for a decade, quietly replaying it in the exact quiet moments when nothing else was competing for its attention. Meanwhile, the actual audience in that hallway moved on somewhere around the following Tuesday, and most of them could not describe the moment to you today if you asked. Here is what to actually do with all of this. Because understanding the mechanism only helps if it changes something the next time that memory surfaces uninvited. The smoke alarm mounted in your kitchen cannot tell the difference between an actual house fire and slightly overcooked toast. It goes off exactly the same way either time, at exactly the same volume, because its only real job is loud, not accurate, and it has no mechanism for judging proportion. Your amygdala works almost identically. It is not measuring how much this genuinely matters to anyone else, and it never was. It is firing the same ancient alarm it would fire for a real, career-ending, relationship-ending, tribe-ending catastrophe, every single time, completely regardless of the actual size of the event that triggered it. The next time that hallway memory surfaces at 11 at night, you do not have to argue with it, debate it, or force it back down through sheer willpower. You can simply notice it for exactly what it is, an old alarm going off in an empty kitchen with nothing burning, and ask yourself the one question that alarm was never built to answer. Who else, tonight, right now, is still thinking about this? 9 times out of 10, based on everything you now know about how this system actually works, the honest answer is nobody. Not because you did not matter to them in that moment, but because their own brain was busy that day building its own urgent file about something you never even noticed happening to them. If you have caught yourself replaying an old memory while reading this, tell me how long ago it happened in the comments, because I promise it will not be the oldest one someone shares. You are back in that bed now, 11 at night, and the memory has surfaced one more time, exactly the way it has 100 times before, right down to the same hot feeling in your face. But you know something now that you did not know at the start of this video. You know that your face going hot is not evidence that you did something unforgivable 10 years ago. It is evidence that for about 4 seconds, an ancient alarm system built for a world of exile and predators mistook a hallway for a genuine threat to your survival, filed it away under urgent, and has been faithfully, needlessly protecting you from it ever since, at real cost to your sleep and your peace and nothing else. The room you are lying in right now is quiet. Nobody else is in it with you, and nobody else anywhere on earth tonight is thinking about that hallway either. Let the alarm ring itself out this time. Do not feed it. Do not argue with it. Just notice, maybe for the first time in 10 years, that you have been the only one still listening the entire time, standing guard over an empty hallway that closed its doors and moved on long before you did.